Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dirk Heiler. I am the chairperson for the BMI Manufacturing and Standards Committee. I've been in this role for the really for the past 20 years, and one of the things that we've done in this role is we have given presentations on the MSST and how it's utilized. Now, the MSST is the Manufacturing Standards and Specifications for Textbooks. It's a document that's been out for a long time. And what I wanted to do in this video is give an overview of what is the MSST, what's in it, and if there are questions afterwards at the end, we have an email address for Matt Baer, who's the director at the Book Manufacturers Institute. And you can go ahead and email those questions to Matt. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? So really, the mission of the MSST is to give a recipe to create durable textbooks or instructional materials. And the MSST has been around a long time. And over time, what's happened is we have modified the MSST, whether it be the materials that we use or the processes that we use, to ensure that books are durable and can remain in the classroom for 6, 7, or 8 years. Now, the history of the MSST is it's a joint effort by SIMRA, which is a State Instructional Materials Review Association. A lot of folks know it as NASTA. We have publishers from the educational field that are part of the group, and then also the print manufacturers that are part of the Book Manufacturing Institute, along with some of our suppliers. And together we form a committee called the MSST Committee. It's formally known as ACTS. Some people remember ACTS, which is the Advisory Committee for Textbook Standards. And what that group does, what we do is we actually work together to manage the MSST. Now, the history of the MSST, it's been around for a long time. It actually started in the 40s and the 50s because every manufacturer and every publisher required different types of materials to be used. And over time, everybody decided to get together and have one common recipe for using those materials. And every few years, there were changes and things that were modified. And actually, I would say probably over the past 10 to 15 years, the recipe's been fairly stable. What happened, the most recent thing that happened in 2019, ACTS was, as an incorporation, was dissolved, and the group got together under the auspice of the BMI, and we created the MSST committee. So that committee still exists and goes through these documents each and every year. Now, really, the point of this is two things. One is we need communication between the printers and the ultimate users of the materials, so that we have a good feedback loop and we can work together to ensure that we're all on the same page with what we need to produce. The second thing is it's all about durability. Again, the MSST is a recipe that's used. It's not a guarantee that a book will stay together, but what it is it's time-tested. It's a time-tested recipe that will ensure that we give a book the best shot at staying together for 7 or 8 years. The beginning of the MSST is just there's a table of contents. This is what it looks like. Really, we've broken it out into different areas. You can see printing requirements, paper requirements, and so forth. So it's broken out by use. It was revised recently with some input from some of the end users. And what I want to do is I'm not going to walk through the book, but I'm going to walk through in general how the book is used and how to think about a textbook and whether it needs to follow the MSST or not. So the first thing to talk about, and it's in the MSST, is the Form B warranty. What this is states ask for the Form B from the publishers who are going to submit books to the states. And it's really just a statement that says, my book is going to follow this criteria. Does it meet the MSST specs or not? Now, I want to make sure that I'm clear on something. You don't have to follow the MSST specs. You could actually submit a book that doesn't follow the MSST specs. But this Form B, you'd have to call that out in the Form B when it's submitted. So again, this is, we'll say, the practice of telling the states or the end user how the book will be manufactured. I want to also make sure that I mention there are no MSST police that are out there. Nobody tracks whether you followed it or not. We actually all work on, it's an honor system that we work with. If you tell someone that you're going to use these materials, the expectation over time is that you do. So again, the material to help fill out the Form B is definitely in the book. So let's get into some of the definitions. And there's 4 categories of books, and I want to make sure that it's clear, because that's the first thing you need to understand when deciding, does a book need to meet the MSST specs or not? There are consumable textbooks. Those are books that are written in and used for a year and then thrown away. There are teacher's editions, which are obviously the books or the products that just the teachers use. There are textbooks, and those are the books that are used repeatedly within the classroom year after year. And the last thing, there are workbooks. Okay, so those are the 4 definitions. So as you go into it, you need to understand what type of product you're using. Now, we'll start to break this down, because from those definitions, you can start to understand the specifications and then ultimately the class of textbook. So for a hardcover textbook, really the thing to take from this slide is it needs to meet the MSST specs. There are clearly some specifications for what type of class the book is, and that class then would dictate what type of materials or binding process we would use. So remember, hardcover textbooks do need to meet the MSST. The next one is there are sometimes non-consumable softcover texts that are used in the classroom. Again, those need to meet the MSST as well. The remaining types of products, like a consumable softcover text, since it's used for 1 year, it doesn't need to be built like it's going to be used in the classroom for 8 years. So it does not need to meet the specs. So for this product, you could use any type of material, any type of paper, any type of bind style. You don't need to follow that MSST recommendation. Same with workbooks, which are use 1 year and move on from. Same with teacher's editions. They do not need to follow the MSST, nor do these other items that are outlined. So it's really critical, again, to understand what the product is that you're bringing forward. And if it's any of those products that don't need to meet the MSST, when you fill out the Form B, you would just indicate that, and you're good. So let's talk about what happens with those 2 types of products that I said need to meet the MSST. The first one is a hardcover textbook. What we really need to do is, based on some specifications of the book, we can actually start to look at what type of binding requirements that are needed, and what type of class the book is in. And I'm going to get to this, and I'll unpack this a little bit later. The next thing is for a soft cover textbook. It's the same thing. You need to understand what grade it is, some of the specifications. And then what we can do is we can identify what the class is for the book. Now I'm going to fast forward to this, but basically on page 85 of the MSST, there is a decision tree that's in there. And if you follow that decision tree, and if you know what type of book it is, you know what the bulk of the book is, and you know what the trim size area is, and then also the grade. If you know those 4 items, you can follow this, and this will tell you what type of class the book is. Based on the class, then we can determine some other things within the MSST, like bind style, cover material, or other items. So again, this was actually put together by one of the publishers. It's a pretty simple cheat sheet that you can follow through. Here's an example of how this would be used. Okay, if we know it's a hardcover textbook, you know grade 5, you know the bulk and the trim size, you can figure out it's class E1. And then if you go to these different areas of the book, you can find, like on page 17, what are the printing margins that are required for a class E1 book? What is the uniform state label requirements? The bottom, what's the paper basis that you would use? What's the binding method? What cover board? And what cover wrap? Those 4 things, knowing it's a hardcover, knowing it's grade 5, knowing the bulk, knowing the trim, those 4 things give us what class it is. And that holds true for softcover texts as well. Again, you can find the margins, the state label, paper basis, weight, binding method, and cover material. All those are items that you would reference when filling out the Form B. So again, fairly straightforward. If you follow that, I would say follow that decision tree, you'll be taken care of and be able to follow this pretty easily. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about is cover materials. Cover materials, it's what is wrapped around the outside of book. They're actually very important. Over time, we've done a lot of testing for how durable different cover materials are. And if I go to this slide right here, what you can see, there's a machine on the left-hand side. It's a universal book tester that actually moves around. The book gets jostled from side to side. It simulates usage from students. 1 hour in it is light usage, 2 hours medium usage, and 3 hours has been determined as heavy usage. Again, a lot of time, a lot of effort went into determining this. And if you put a book in the universal book tester and you run it for an hour, you'll see what type of wear you get. And actually, these are 3 samples right here from books that were actually put through a universal book tester. This book right here with the pink on the back, this was 1 hour of usage with 100-pound C1S material as a cover material. And you can see the back, the joints start to fall apart. The head gets really worn. Again, this simulates students dropping the book in their locker or repeatedly, dumping them on the ground. If we use a different type of material, a laminated material, we call it a type 2 material. It's really it's an engineered paper. If you look at it, these both survive 3 hours of the tumble tester, and you can see not much wear. Again, at the beginning, I said, if you follow the recipe that we outline in the MSST, you'll have the best chance of books lasting. And again, when you go through the MSST, you'll find that type 2 material is recommended for hardcover textbooks rather than C1S, and this is why. There are other tests that we do when we test the outside materials. We test it for light, stability to light, abrasion, tear resistance, number of different things you can see listed here. Again, durability isn't just one of these properties, but it's being able to meet all or most of these properties that gives something its durability. So that is my quick primer to the MSST. Over the years, there's been a number of questions that have been asked. If you go through the MSST in each section, we've actually logged questions that have been asked all the way back into the 70s. So a lot of times, if you've got a question about a paper or about a bind style, you can go to these interpretations and look at the listing of questions and find the answer. If you don't find the answer in there, you can email or call Matt Bear at the Book Manufacturers Institute, and he can put you in touch with either myself or someone on our team that can definitely answer your question. So again, that's a quick overview of the MSST. If you're interested in having some questions answered, or if you'd be interested in having a live presentation, feel free to contact Matt. We can set that up. Thanks, and have a good day.